I'm not on an email, but I'll send you my information via email.
Oh, I see. Hey, Garuv, what's your email address? Garuv, you there?
You can use web support.
Okay, web support. Starting a chain with us. Okay. All right, so I've just put you all in a chain. You guys can communicate there. You should be able to go ahead and run the meeting. You guys can communicate via email or text. Hey, Dr. Dukes. I see you're there.
How's everyone?
Good.
Great.
Good. I believe that we are letting the panelists into the meeting and that we'll be prepared to start in about 2 minutes or so.
Yes, ma'am. Great. Great. And we are successfully live on YouTube, so we can all take a breath and know that we're compliant.
Miriam, can you hear me?
Yes, I can.
This is Artist. Just checking in. I'm gonna put my phone back on mute.
Okay.
So I believe that David has informed us that we are live. So that means that even as we are checking in with each other, that the public is very much aware of our dialogue. Am I correct?
Correct.
Thank
Yes.
you. And what I'd like to do, because it is 2:01, is to go ahead and get started. Good afternoon, certainly to the co-chairs, to my co-chair, David Velasquez, to the support team, and certainly to the Prince George's County community. My name is Charlene Dukes, and I have the pleasure of serving as one of the co-chairs of the Prince George's Forward Task Force. And today you'll have the opportunity to hear from us as we talk about the focus of our work moving forward. This task force, as everyone is aware, was created by the county executive to begin to rethink and to reimagine who and what Prince George's County has the potential to be post-COVID-19. So it's my pleasure to welcome everyone here today and to thank everyone for agreeing to serve on this task force. We have assembled some of the brightest minds and thinkers in Prince George's County, the state of Maryland, and the region. And we are here for one reason and one reason only. It is to face this unprecedented pandemic in a way that allows us to emerge better and stronger. We know that the challenge ahead of us is great, but we are a team ready to do great things. We've all had a chance to meet each other, and so we know that the work has started and that we are ready to move forward with it. Our job is to help Prince George's County recover from the crisis in which we find ourselves. In some areas, we'll build a new foundation for a recovery, and in others, we will want you to help us recover and reimagine the way we operate. We are ready to emerge from this storm stronger than ever, and we know you're depending on us as the task force to make it happen. We have been tasked to report high quality recommendations on how we can recover and reimagine for our county, our families, our friends, and our neighbors. Every single one of us is here for a reason. We have expertise in health, education, human and social services, economics, and government operations, because we know that these are the areas that are really important to us as we think about and imagine a better Prince George's County. The quality of the recommendations that each of these work groups will present really depends upon the quality of our own interaction with each other and as we listen to our public. It depends on our commitment to work together to find solutions, and teamwork will result in a positive flow of information. And as we work with you and we work with each other, we're proud to collaborate with the Deputy Chief Administrative Officers as we move forward to a new chapter in our history. We've all experienced the hardship that this virus has brought forward. And of course, we know with all of the protests that are going around across the country, that also social justice is something that we must look at as we think about the recommendations. So as we cautiously continue to move towards reopening, it's important for us to remember that this disease has not yet gone away. We must reopen safely, and we must keep in mind our new reality and continue to act in the best interest of Prince George's County. I am positive that we have assembled the right team. I know that we will supply the right advice to get our county back on track. We are so proud of the work that will go into this task force, and we are excited to do it together. And what I will say is, as our public begins to think about how they can interact with us, I would remind you, and we'll do so throughout this session today, to please send an email to pathforward@co.pg.md.us. That is path, PATHFORWARD @co.pg.md.us. And now I'd like to turn it over to the co-chair of the Prince George's Forward Task Force, Mr. Dave Velasquez, the president and CEO of Pepco Holdings.
Dr. Dukes, thank you. Thank you for that introduction, and wanted on the agenda next to move to introduce the subcommittee chairs and also allow them to briefly give us an overview of the specific focus areas on which they're working on. But before I do that, just to echo Dr. Dukes' comments, the work that y'all are doing, that this task force is doing, is critical to the future of Prince George's County. And I know, as she has said, that we have the right people, the right expertise, and all of your expertise will be critical to us coming up with the right recommendations. And I'm confident that we will, to help move the county forward as well. So again, thanks to all, not just the chairs of the subcommittees, but also to everyone who's been serving on the subcommittees. And I know the subcommittees have reached beyond just their membership to bring in other experts to help provide advice and information, and thank them for their time as well, because without all of our efforts collectively together, this wouldn't be, we would not be able to be successful. So with that, I wanted to give a brief introduction and go through with each of the subcommittee chairs to provide a brief overview of the specific focus areas that they're working on. I was going to start with the education recovery subgroup, and Dr. Darrell Pines is the chair. Probably needs no introduction. I think most folks know Dr. Pines, but he is the 34th president of the University of Maryland, College Park. He's also the Glenn Martin Professor of Aerospace Engineering, and he's been there for 25 years on the College Park campus, has served both as a dean and also a professor there. So very, very well integrated into the community, into the education community, and uniquely qualified to help serve in this capacity as chair. So Dr. Pines.
Thank you, Chairman Velasquez, and thank you, Madam Chair, Dr. Dukes. And so we have had 4 meetings over 4 weeks now. It's been a very exciting set of discussions. I just want to summarize some of the folks that we've had come to engage our education recovery committee. Our first speaker was Dr. Goldson, the CEO of Prince George's County Public School System, in which he gave an overview of the return to campus plans for the entire system. It was actually just a riveting presentation by Dr. Goldson with lots of input, but really doing a great job to get the school system back going for this fall. Our second speaker was Dr. Karen Salmon, she is obviously the state superintendent for all of Maryland schools. And we invited her to talk about what other things was she seeing, both in the short term and in the long term, that would help inform the county as it returned to campus, and also strategically in the long term. We were fortunate to have her come and speak to our committee a couple of weeks ago, just to give a couple of highlights of what she spoke about. 2 things that she was really, really concerned about. One was student mentoring. And she has a $100 million program that she got money from, I think, through the CARES Act and through the state to help support that endeavor for mentoring students while they were online. It's a big concern throughout the entire state and, of course, in Prince George's County. She got another $100 million to close the digital divide throughout the state of Maryland. What she was seeing when we went online in the spring was that both rural and urban and some suburban areas were having a real gap with technology, software, hardware. So she got another $100 million from the state to support that. We were not aware of that until she came to our committee. So that was good. So it's an opportunity for Prince George's County to get some resources to support the county going forward broadly. And then just yesterday, we had Dr. Britt Kerwin, former president of the University of Maryland, former chancellor of the University System of Maryland. He also chaired what is now called famously the Kerwin Commission, which is really looking forward for all state of Maryland schools going forward. And some of the highlights of his presentation, and there were many, so I can't give all of them, was he felt from having studied this problem across the United States and Europe, that what we needed to focus on in Prince George's County and throughout the state of Maryland is a strong focus on pre-K education. Massachusetts has shown that pre-K education with an emphasis of resources and teacher training and preparation led to really great outcomes as students went into elementary school and then transitioned into middle school. So that was really, really an essential portion. The other thing that he studied in Massachusetts was that the teacher salaries were increased in Massachusetts so that the teaching profession was highly valued and that the best individuals from Massachusetts went into the teaching profession. Moreover, the way Massachusetts managed the teaching profession was they match junior teachers with mentor master teachers so that they would actually get the proper oversight and mentorship as they went through the system. That is what enhanced the Massachusetts educational system. He just pointed to those 2 issues. There were many, many more, but I think that's something we would look forward going strategically forward for Prince George's County. Now, as it relates to some of the other work of the committee, as you know, we are in 5 special focus groups. And I just want to highlight some of the recommendations that we've already started that have come out of our education subcommittee. So all the universities, the Prince George's County public system, as well as private school systems are developing what we call these return to campus plans. And what we decided as a really good work product and as an outcome to meet some of our goals for August 3rd to deliver to the executive committee is have all of these plans available for across all of our educational enterprises and make them all available to each other. So a shared work plan of having all of these return to campus plans available for anybody so that as we go back to campus, we can glean and get the best practices collectively from our work plans across K-12 into P20, into community college and into higher four-year colleges. So that's one of our work products. Another thing that came up that was a discussion across our committee, and it came out of our three speakers as well, is that as we tried to close the digital divide, we found like that wasn't the only problem. So while you may have gotten an iPad or a notepad, what happens is some parents, some students didn't know how to use the notepad. They didn't know how to use the software. And so we thought that a good idea for the county would be to provide a remote help desk through IT services that would essentially communicate with parents and with students to help them walk them through the process for using the hardware and the software so that they can be successful academically. And even higher education could provide some support at no cost to the county was an idea that came up. So that's one of also our recommendations. Another idea that came up was the use of higher education students at Prince George's Community College, at Bowie State, and at University of Maryland. Many of our students will tutor students in the STEM subjects for free. They just haven't been asked. And so we're collectively getting some of the, so Prince George's Community College plus Bowie State and University of Maryland are going to get together with our student pool and basically provide this as a service, at least for this fall, to our county system and our private system, because I know that many students in STEM will just do this because they just care about education, they care about students, and they want to, they want to do it as a service. They're actually just checking a box for service at no cost to the county, right? So that was a great idea that came out of our teams. And so going forward, we have now divided our entire, I think we have 20 people in our education subcommittee into our 5 special focus groups. And at our next meeting, we're going to break out for the entire hour and a half and have each of the different special focus areas start to work on these recommendations, these near-term recommendations, and eventually on the long-term recommendations. But we're really going to address the August 3rd deadline. And I expect a lot of good ideas will come out of that discussion next week. So I think we're making really good progress going forward. And I'm really excited about the discussions that we've had today. And then there's one final plug, and this is a selfish plug, not for me, but for one of our colleagues who's on the committee. He just had a book come out in Amazon. He didn't ask me to do this, so I'm just doing this for fun. The book, I'm trying to remember the title. It's Madison, help me out.
Split Second Decisions by Dr. Geoffrey Mount Varner. And there's more to the title. I can't think of it off the top of my head, but yes, it just came out on Amazon yesterday. I highly suggest you guys take a look when you get a chance.
Thank you, Madison, for backing me up there. I forgot the title. So anyway, that's my report, Madam Chair and Mr. Chair and Co-Chair. So I'm happy to answer any questions.
Thank you, Dr. Pines, and I'll have to look up, I made a note, I'll have to look up the book on Amazon. Hopefully it's available on Kindle, which is my plan.
It is, by the way. $10.
$10 on Kindle, $14.99 on paperback.
Better off going electronically. So next wanted to turn to Ms. Rosie Allen Herring, who chairs the Human Services and Social Services Recovery. I think most folks know, but Ms. Allen Herring is President and Chief Executive Officer of the United Way of the National Capital Area. And she has more than 20 years of experience in corporate philanthropy, community investment. As formerly, she was the Managing Director of the Community Investment and Engagement Division at Fannie Mae. So let me turn it over to you, Ms. Allen Herring, for a report.
Thank you, Chairman Velasquez, and thank you so much, Chairman Dukes, for the opportunity to be able to share with everyone today. I do want to begin by offering my deepest appreciation to all of the members of the Health and Human Services Recovery Committee, where we have in our ranks significant leaders from across the county that deeply care about all that we must do here, as well as significant subject matter experts who offer their services to the county every day in their roles as county professionals. And I do want to thank Madison Gray, who is with us, who keeps us all on point, and the fact that Dr. Pines referred to her, I may have to do the same. In terms of the Human Services Recovery Group, we too have met multiple times and have had the opportunity to hear a broad scale of areas of focus that we must entertain in order to also meet that deliverable that Dr. Pines has mentioned as August 3rd. And we hope to have many of our deliverables, or at least our recommendations, before the end of July. In having our meetings, there have been a plethora of ideas that have come forth, brainstorm, if you will, that we've now had to focus and become even more intentional with regards to the human services effort. We have had subject matter experts to be able to present to the team. And also in that it is Elena Butler from Department of Family Services, as well as Gloria Brown Burnett from Department of Human Services, who shared with us a lot of the challenges that they're seeing, certainly during this COVID environment, that makes things that were already a challenge even more exacerbated, if you will. One of the statistics that was shared with us by Director Burnett was the SNAP benefits allocation. The applications for SNAP benefits in March of 2020, which was really sort of kind of the beginning of us recognizing that the pandemic was as serious as it is in terms of everyone taking the time. The applications in March of 2020 were 5,200 applications for SNAP benefits. In April, 30 days later of 2020, the applications were 38,000 applications for SNAP benefits. That's a 632% increase in applications just from that 1 month to the next. And of course, as the pandemic continues, those numbers have continued to rise. And so we again see the significant challenge that just from 1 month to the next, and the fact that as the challenge continues, these numbers are certainly expanded. We also have brought up serious concerns around child protective services, knowing that many of our children are now at home or not necessarily in instructional environments where they've typically been, where there have been child protective services available to us, trained professionals in trauma, certainly the education and academic professionals that are available to them as well. The emergency rental assistance, again, in line with the SNAP benefits line of thinking there are significant challenges in that light. While there are public policy concerns with regards to how current evictions can occur, we know that at some point in time with our legislative body, those particular protections may run out, and we expect that there to be an impact in where that goes. We have to look out and think about our returning citizens, what's happening now in our corrections area of focus in terms of what we do for those that are returning back to us, and what support programs and supportive housing efforts that are there that now need to be revisited. And of course, the job market, where we are in terms of Prince George's now having over 90,000 individuals that have applied for unemployment benefits that is some of the record highs that we've had here in the county. And never mind, again, because I have the pleasure of working side by side with Dr. George Askew, our deputy advisor for human services, our deputy CAO for human services. And he's been able to share with us a lot of the statistics around where COVID is, knowing that Prince George's is one of the hottest spots when it comes to the COVID pandemic itself for the state of Maryland. We recognize that we also cannot lose the health aspect of it. Under many of our seniors, we have individuals who are coming to us from the Department of Aging who bring that expertise, where those are some of our vulnerable populations in addition to children, and certainly those without the financial means and financial stability. We're looking at, again, not only just the challenges, but we're also looking at solutions. And we too have 4 specific areas that the entire team has been divided into in order to be able to bring forth some very specific, or bring forward recommendations with specificity around the timeline for them to be able to happen. Those that we believe should be some, hopefully, quick wins for us, those that may be a little bit longer term in terms of 6 to 12 months, and those that may be longer term for us beyond the 12-month period. Those 4 specific areas are integrating data for individualized recovery and resilience, strengthening public-private partnerships through building nonprofit and faith-based organizational capacity, identifying individual and family needs in real time, and addressing equity in vulnerable communities, anticipation of growth of service needs, and the provision of adequate infrastructure to be able to help them. Those are our key 4 specific focus areas that the group has also divided itself into in terms of being able to focus on and bringing the subject matter expertise of those county professionals who have been able to offer what they can for us. Again, it is a load of work. I am very proud to say that our group has significant representation from all spectrums of our county, if you will. The faith community is very well represented. The nonprofit community is also represented. We also have business community with members from AARP, from Microsoft and the like. And we believe that in having that talent pool, if you will, we're bringing our best thinking to be able to move this work forward. So again, those 4 specific focus areas, along with the breakout and in partnership with the county professionals, we too will be working to bring forth our recommendations, short-term, longer-term, as well as quick wins by that August 3rd deadline. Thank you so much. I yield back to you, Mr. Chairman and Madam Chair.
Yeah. Ms. Allen Herring, thanks for that report. And I think, it highlights for all of us some of the statistics you quoted, highlights for all of us the impact that this is having on Prince George's County, and just highlights the importance of the work that we all need to do and the challenge ahead of us. So thank you. Thank you for that.
632% is a huge jump from one month to the next. That tells us our county is hurting. They need us, and this is critical work.
And it's easy to talk about a percentage, but every single one of them is an individual person, an individual family, an individual household that needs help.
Absolutely.
Thank you.
Thank you.
I wanted to switch next to the Health Recovery Subcommittee and Dr. Joseph Wright, who chairs that. Dr. Wright is the Senior Vice President and Chief Medical Officer at the University of Maryland Capital Region Health System. He had previously served as Professor and Chair of Pediatrics at Howard University College of Medicine, Senior Vice President within the Children's National Health System, and his experience goes well beyond that in public health within Maryland and also within federally funded Emergency Medical Health Services National Resource Center as well. So Dr. Wright, please proceed.
Unmute. Thank you, Chairman Velasquez, and thank you and Dr. Dukes for keeping us organized here as the chair group. I have to acknowledge a great deal of support for our health recovery work group and acknowledge Chief of Staff Joy Russell and the Deputy Chief Administrative Officer, Dr. Askew, who is spread across a couple, if not 3, of our working groups. So we have had 2 work group meetings and have over the course of the last several weeks broken out into the subgroups that will be generating the immediate term recommendations. And we have had the benefit of a great deal of support from the county team, including Linda Turner, Ryan Middleton, and Carrie Ann Pert from the health department. And this is important because so much of our membership are still very much engaged in response. And just to put into context, this is, I think, probably widely appreciated already. However, when we look at Prince George's County from a health response perspective in the context of the 3,100 counties across the United States, the impact of the coronavirus pandemic places us at number 22 at over 3,000 counties in the country in terms of volume, number of citizens who have been impacted. And I saw a statistic the other day, if Prince George's County were a state, we would have more impacted citizens than 20 other states in the United States. So I mention that just in terms of the sheer volume, and to put into context the impact of the health response. And I'm proud that our group is constituted by members of all of the health systems that have been engaged in this response for the last several months, including those at the chief executive officer level, as well as a number of frontline providers, and also constituted by members from the entire continuum of care that is necessary in order to generate a health recovery with regard to this pandemic, including Care First and our federally qualified health center partners. So we have a wide range of participation, and we have, as I mentioned, broken out into our specific focus areas, and let me just detail those for you. The first is health operations, and literally focused on the task of ensuring that our health leadership, including Dr. Carter and his team, the health officer and his team, have what they need to manage not only the response to a pandemic, but to really begin to be about the business of mitigation and prevention, which is so critical in the Prince George's Forward and the Go Forward effort. Our second group is focused on preparing for the next wave, because assuredly, we will be not only dealing with the coronavirus as it stabilizes here in the state of Maryland and in Prince George's County, but assuredly as we move into the fall and have the confluence of the influenza season, we will assuredly need to be dealing with that next wave of preparedness. Our third group is focused on health equity. Rosie Allen Herring already mentioned the importance of leveraging the expertise across this task force to ensure that the systemic and the structural issues that contribute to the disproportionate impact of this pandemic on our community, looking at the underlying chronic disease burden, looking at the health disparities relative to access and care, critically important as we look at the go forward. The next area that we are looking at is infrastructure. Dr. Carter and his epidemiologist at the health department down at Perkins have both presented to our group, and they both have shared the work, the day-to-day work of the health department in tracking this pandemic. And Donna Perkins in particular presented a very granular picture down to the zip code neighborhood level of how the coronavirus is impacting specific communities. And one very impressive analysis that I think is going to be very useful for everybody is that the health department has been able to track the impact on communities into the councilmanic districts that comprise the county, the 9 councilmanic districts for which the county council has jurisdiction. And this is important because it's in terms of leadership, in terms of how we best leverage our elected officials in the county. It's important for them to be able to see from a geo-mapping perspective how this pandemic is not only impacting our local neighborhoods, but on a broader scale, our councilmanic districts. The next area of focus is on our continuing response. We are still in this. As I sit here today, we are still obviously managing coronavirus impacted citizens in our health facility, and we must go on with the normal care that has been stymied, in fact, over the course of the last few months, and is now presenting a backlog, if you will, of disease burden for individuals who have not received the ongoing care that is required for the conditions that they suffer with. So the continuing response, while we are at the same time managing the health of our community, is the focus of that group. And then two more: strengthening the systems. So I mentioned about the continuity of care. Our federally qualified health center partners provide a backbone and a continuum for those who are underinsured or uninsured, and making sure that there is an alignment of those assets with not only the hospital care, but the preventive measures that are necessary going forward. And then our last group is identifying and filling the gaps. Assuredly, there are many gaps, many citizens who fall through the gaps. For instance, the less than adequate primary care network that we are trying to strengthen provides an opportunity for us to really make recommendations around those gaps. So among the 7 specific focus areas, there is overlap, and we are in the process now of collapsing the series of recommendations and grouping them in a way where we recognize the overlap. There's overlap not only within our own work group, but certainly with the Health and Human Services work group that Rosie Allen Herring just presented. So we are in the process of coalescing our quick win recommendations and expect to deliver those on time and for the August 3rd deadline. So that's what I have to present, and thank you for your attention.
Dr. Wright, thank you. Thank you for that report. And I think, a couple of things, the use of data, I think, is going to be very important. And the more data we're able to get to make this a data-based exercise is going to be very, very critical to success. And also, I think the fact that you point out, as we begin to get some of these recommendations, we will see areas of overlap and synergy between the different groups. And I think that just makes it a more powerful set of recommendations as we go forward. But certainly something, appreciate you reaching out to Rosie and her group as well to talk about where there's areas of overlap. So again, thank you for that report. And wanted to turn next to the Economic Recovery Group, chaired by Mr. Thomas Graham. He's currently the principal of T.H. Graham and Associates, and prior to that, worked at Pepco. Proud to have been a colleague of Mr. Graham's for a number of years. And served for a while there as president of Pepco as well. So, Tom.
Thank you, Dave. Our Economic Recovery Work Group, I know you'll want to know, we are on schedule to provide our quick recommendations by the August 3rd deadline, Dave. DCAO Rogers has provided a comprehensive document with 12 key ideas from work she's done with their economic development cluster for our consideration. So that's been very helpful with regards to establishing a foundation for our deliberations. Our work group is in the process of vetting those ideas in addition to recommendations that we may have on our own. But again, we'll be on schedule. Additionally, we've had formal presentations made by David Iannucci of the EDC and also by DCAO Rogers from the EDC and Walter Simmons from Employee Prince George's. Very informative, laying the foundation for where we are today and what the challenge is for the county, and reinforcing the charge for our particular work group. Future presentations will be scheduled with OCS, Office of Central Services, DPI, which is the permitting agency, and also Park and Planning. The feeling of the group is there's a lot of opportunity with respect to job creation through projects moving at a swifter pace through the permitting process. It's it's something that we all have to take a look at. And I also think probably WSSC, plays a role in that process as well. Our work group has been broken up into two subgroups. The first subgroup is job and wealth creation. Under job and wealth creation is business recovery, job recovery / workforce development in tourism recovery. They are under the leadership of Kerry Watson at MGM and also David Harrington, the CEO and president at Prince George's Chamber of Commerce. The second group, under that group, we have economic relief, we have real estate, we have policy tools and resources, and mass transit. That group has then broken up into 3 different subgroups dealing specifically with real estate, mass transit, and economic relief. I'd just like to conclude by thanking DCAO Rogers, the whole economic development cluster, the administrative support team, Brandon Starks, and of course, all the members, about 20 or so members on our team, and welcome a new member from Bank of America, Derek, for the many hours they've already committed to the work group. And Mr. Velasquez and Dr. Dukes, that concludes our report, and open to any questions that you might have.
Thanks, Tom. Appreciate the report and the work that you're doing. And last, wanted to turn to the Government Operations Recovery Group chaired by Governor O'Malley. And again, I think his background speaks for itself as former governor of Maryland, and now serving as a fellow at the Institute of Politics and Public Service at Georgetown University, among other things. So, Governor.
Hey, thank you. Want to thank Tara Jackson, Terry Spigner, and everybody on the committee. We've been doing some good work. Here's our areas of focus. Very succinctly, overview first. Remote work, customer-facing services, continuity of government, and within that, continuity of operations, some nuanced differences between the two, digitization of documents and processes. And fifth, we talked a bit about procedures on when people return to work, screening, temperature checks, and the like. So let me go through each of those just a little more deeply. It's our assumption as part of this work group that we are going to be facing the reality, the likelihood, or the possibility, depending on how you choose to look at it, of this virus being with us, as that health committee reported, for some time here into the fall. We're looking at the likelihood of as much as 40% of a workforce being out at any given time. Yes, that can all be affected by how quickly we ramp up contact tracing, the ability to isolate and contain. But those are the realities we're looking at. And so in the context of that reality, we believe it's imperative that we maximize the ability of our workforce, insofar as possible, to work remotely, to work from home. To that end, we feel there needs to be a quick survey to update telework policies across the county and propose a new normal remote work plan. Secondly, on the customer-facing services, there is an inventory, I believe, that's already underway of customer-facing services, building on some of the good work the county's already done on this score, to figure out what the impact, where it's already working. The good news is, for the last couple of months, whether we wanted to or not, we've had a dry run on working remote. So most of your very capable government, public administrators and managers probably already have a pretty good sense of what's working okay from home and what just can't be done at all from home, and also employees that might be sitting idle because of the nature of their work. So the need to pull that together into a view that the county executive can see, and that the county senior management can see and understand, I think is pretty important as we move forward here. And so related to that is that inventory of customer-facing services. Out of order here, I'm going to go to digitization of documents and processes. We have already learned, at least anecdotally, that one of the great impediments to working remotely is the need to access paper documents or to accomplish things that require the review of folders, review of files, and the like. There's pretty unrealistic to think we can get all of that done in the next couple of months, but there's no time like the present. So having an understanding of what those major impediments are and the degree to which they affect citizens and also the operations and continuity of government is important. And so a survey is underway, and we understand we're going to be using there's also some consultants that the county will be using, in fact, already has used on the digitization roadmap. Finally, updating the continuity of government and the continuity of operations plans is really important. And we had an awesome briefing from the director of the Office of Emergency Management. But all of this underscores the need, and more than this report out can fulfill. But there is a need to understand and to plan for redundancy measures in terms of how do you backfill if 40% of your workforce in a given function, call it trash collection or anything else, is suddenly out because of the combination of illness or quarantine. And also the need to understand which employees might be cross-trained to perform multiple functions, and the authority of the county executive under current contracts and emergency considerations to repurpose or reassign employees perhaps outside of their usual work or even out of their bargaining unit. So those are all things that we're working on. And some of the quickest wins are actually the surveys. It's one thing for managers to know at the line level. It's another thing to have an understanding of that in terms of the enterprise of government. And I think we're well underway for all of this. And I'll just stop there. Thank you.
Governor, thank you for that report, and it highlights again, I think, how essential the county services are and that continuity of operation. And let's hope we don't get to, the 40% absentee rate. But I'll give you an anecdote from the broader Exelon company that I work with, where we had a group that does, I'll say, heavy hauling of major heavy equipment. And because of a couple coronavirus cases, ended up quarantining pretty much the entire group, all like 18 people.
Right.
And, reach outside to get contractors to supplement that. So even if it doesn't happen across the entire county government or entire enterprise, it can hit a specific group, and you need to have plans and redundancies in place to react. So very important to do that planning as well. So again, thanks to all the subcommittee chairs, but also everyone who's been involved. It certainly reflects, you can already see the amount of work and time and thought that's gone into it. And it makes me look forward to some of the upcoming dates as some of these recommendations get finalized and there's more granularity around them as well. I think it'd be very, very helpful, where Dr. Duke started, very, very helpful to the county to be able to get all this input, all these ideas that people are bringing up to be able to help them move forward. We've talked a little bit about, and I think people have heard mention, the August 3rd date. And I think the next item we wanted to move to, unless there's comments Dr. Dukes wants to make, but the next item we wanted to move to was to discuss a little bit more detail, the timeline and some more intermediate dates and kind of how we see that moving forward. And for that discussion, I'll turn it over to David Sloan, who's the Director of Policy Planning and Public Affairs in the County Executive's Office. So David?
Maybe if I could,
Yes.
Dave, before we go there, we do want to acknowledge that the task force was created by executive order under the county executive, Angela Also Brooks, and the chief of staff, Joy Russell. So we do want to acknowledge the two of them for their work and their commitment to ensuring that as we think about the county moving forward, that we are not just thinking in quick, real-time wins, but they have to be actionable and they have to be transformative and certainly imaginative. So we do want to acknowledge them for their leadership around this. And if I could, before we get to the timeline, because you've heard it mentioned a few times, I would like to ask a question and maybe see if we can engage in a little bit of discussion. For the work groups and the chairs of the work group subcommittees, do you foresee any sort of gaps or opportunities or challenges that we should be aware of as you are engaged in the dialogue and moving things forward to recommendations? And if you can either use the raise your hand function that's on the participant link, or you can just raise your hand, and we'll see if there are any responses that you have. Dr. Wright?
Yes, thank you, Dr. Dukes. We have encouraged our members to think aspirationally. And the reason I mention that is because so much of the go forward is predicated on resource availability. And I don't want the creativity of the subject matter experts across all of these subcommittees to feel constraint in their imagining these recommendations. Granted, the recommendations have to be grounded in the reality of in which we live, but the ability for us to really, and I'll just use one of our specific focus areas, prepare for the next wave, requires us to learn from what we've been through, what we're going through, and to think out of the box in many instances about how we either redeploy or redirect resources. And I specifically am sensitized to this when we hear about the funding streams, for instance, that support the Department of Health. And this is not unique to Prince George's County. The health departments that support the counties across the state are tied to the state health department. And in fact, our health officers have a dual reporting relationship to the state Commissioner for Health. And so I say all that to just, and I'm sure that this is germane across all of our groups, for our members to really think beyond what the current resource environment may look like in terms of making recommendations that are actionable and that make sense for what has been an unprecedented experience and what will assuredly be more unprecedented experience as we continue to deal with the go forward around this pandemic.
Thank you. Are there any other responses? Just thinking as we think through this, Governor O'Malley.
Yeah, Dr. Dukes, one of the big variables that we're facing in all of this is the same one that we face as a broader community, and that is the speed and the effectiveness of the testing and the contact tracing, the ability to isolate. So when you talk about government operations, again, back to the rather mundane but significant sanitation public health task of collecting the trash. I mean, if we don't have testing, we don't have contact tracing, then the blunt force response or is to quarantine large numbers of employees. Whereas if we're doing contact tracing well, and we're also have the rapid testing, that's a big variable that will impact on the effectiveness that we continue operations even as this thing continues to flare up and and bite at us. We haven't really gotten to budget considerations in terms of removing barriers for remote work. That's a little bit of the cart before the horse right now. I think we have to understand. I think we have to know what we already know about and what we've already learned, to the Dr. Wright's point, about these last couple of months in terms of the barriers to remote work and the degree to which we might get a return on investment that would justify the expenditure of dollars on, digitization or other electronic solutions. So that's kind of our perspective. The biggest variable is one that's not really in our lane, and that is the speed of contact tracing and testing. There is a need, I think, and I would humbly suggest to the folks at the health that do have that lane at public health, there's a need to think on two levels: general public and also the within the enterprise of government itself, and then even one more level, and that is your most essential workers, in terms of the need to be able to respond rapidly to control outbursts within the workplace. As indeed, I think some nursing homes, the better operated ones, are showing the way forward on that. Make sense?
Yes, thank you.
Okay.
Dr. Pines?
So, just to echo Dr. Wright and Governor O'Malley, all of these things are intertwined. And of course, it starts with health. And for us in education, for the entire P20 enterprise, we all went from, not doing everything in person to online in like a week, everybody across the entire enterprise, with, not the proper training for everyone. So everything didn't go very well. But what we worry about is that if there's a rebound of the coronavirus cases in Prince George's County or in the state of Maryland, that we already lost 4 months of education with our most acute population groups, especially those who are lower income, from certain demographic groups, obviously in the county. And it concerns us greatly that if we have to go to online again, that literally this class of students will be a year behind, going forward. And these critical, reading, math, going forward is going to be acute. And what drives it as well is not even just if the coronavirus cases go up. Let's say they don't go up. One of the other issues is whether parents can go back to work, as Governor O'Malley said. If only 40% of the workforce can go back to work because they have to take care of their children, that means their children possibly can't get an education the way they would normally get it. So it's very, the work-life balance that affects education is severe. And we worry about that, going forward. And we're fortunate that we have the summer. The summer is allowing the whole P20 enterprise to retrain the teachers on the technologies to use the online modality just in the event that we have to go online again. So that, thank God, it's given us some time, but we still have to recover these 4 months for the student population in terms of their learning. So that's what we worry about. So we're all intertwined. It's a domino effect. We hope that we don't have a rebound in the fall.
Thank you. Just thought it important to understand how we're thinking through all of these issues that are in front of us, and where we see the opportunity to grow and think outside of the box. I think that was the term that Dr. Wright used, and really help others to understand that we're looking at not just in terms of the way forward, we're looking at our gaps, our opportunities, our challenges, and the recommendations that we bring forward, what we hope will go a long ways towards overcoming all of those. I'd like to, Mr. Co-Chair, with your permission one more time, because we do have with us Artis Hampshire Cowan, who is the principal of Leverage Leadership, LLC, and her work is to help us ensure that across all of the work groups that we are looking for the opportunities around synergy, collaboration, interconnectedness, and alignment. So I'm not asking artists to make any comments right now, but just want to ensure that everyone knows that we are thinking along those lines too, so that each of the work groups is not operating in isolation. And with that, Mr. Velasquez, I'll turn it back to you to introduce the next agenda item.
Dr. Dukes, thanks. And I think I already began to kind of jump the gun there a little bit, but we're going to be talking in more detail about the timeline. And to do that, we've got David Sloan, who's the Director of Policy Planning and Public Affairs in the County Exec's office, to kind of walk us through a little more detail around the timeline, not just the August 3rd date, which we've talked about.
Thanks, Dave and Dr. Dukes. I wanted to make sure if you guys could see the timeline document. I'm gonna attempt to share it again. Okay, please let me know if you see the file.
Yes.
You do, okay.
Yes.
You can see me manipulating it too? Okay, great.
Yes.
Okay, great. A huge principle of our task force has always been trying to be very clear about what our goals are, and building in mechanisms that ensure that the leaders of our task force and all members are operating in a way that provides alignment with the county executive, the chief of staff, and our co-chairs, meaning that as you progress through your work, there are inflection points that allow for them to get an understanding of where you're headed, so that if there is commentary or input needed from the level of the county executive or chief of staff or the co-chairs, they can give it from an informed place. So what we're trying to do here with this timeline is accomplish that and give you a clear runway to land in the finalization of your recommendations and the actual lists of the recommendations you attempt to make. So there are two goals with this timeline. First, the first goal is to be clear about when you should be completing the list making of your recommendations, not necessarily composing the recommendations themselves, but putting pen to paper and moving from the brainstorming session to actually being able to put down on paper what recommendations you intend to work on. And so by August 3rd, we wanted to make sure that your list of quick win recommendations is completed, along with your templates, by the way. And then by September 1st, we wanted to make sure that you were planning to submit the list of short-term and long-term recommendations you intend to work on that you know of at that point, right? It might be preliminary, it might not be final, but as best as you can get to a final list of what you believe your committee is going to work on, we want to make sure that list is shared and the county executive, the chief of staff, and the leadership know where you're going. Okay, so that's number one, completing the list. And then there's also number two, which is beginning and completing to draft the recommendations in the form of the templates we provided. So very specifically, by August 3rd, you're completing two things. The list of quick wins that we need you to have is submitted, and the templates for the quick wins are completed. Now, if your list of recommendations is done before August 3rd, by all means, please submit them, right? But we know that we're coming up on that first benchmark pretty fast. So we were thinking in reality, not in terms of being a machine that you can't follow. So for August 3rd, you're going to submit your templates and your quick wins. Great. Then moving on to your short-term recommendations, we want to make sure that the list of short-term and long-term, recommendations are in by September 1st. By September 1st. By September 14th, the templates for your short-term recommendations should be submitted, okay? And then for long-term recommendations, we want to make sure that your templates are in and submitted by November the 18th. So again, there's two principles at the same time. You know, early, you're completing the list for everyone to review, but then you're also composing the recommendations by the due dates prescribed. Now, how does this work with our August calendar in terms of quick wins? So the quick win timeline is as follows. The quick win recommendations will be submitted to the chairs by August 3rd. Obviously, this is when the same, your list and your templates completed. Then they will be discussed at the August 5th executive committee meeting, the same setting as we're in now. And then the quick win recommendations will be submitted for full task force discussion and finalization on August the 19th. And then we will be releasing the quick win recommendations to the public shortly after the exact date to be determined. Of course, your project managers are there to guide this process. And if, as I sometimes do, I've confused folks in my explanation of this, they can provide clarity along the way as well.
Questions for David?
Wonderful.
So as I've always said with the team here at Prince George's Community College, I'm not really great with that 10-second rule that says you should wait 10 seconds to give everyone a moment to think it through and see if there are any questions. So we'll wait like 3 more. Then Dave, it seems as though we're all on the same page with the timeline and understand the expectations of the work that's due at that throughout the timeline.
Thank you, ma'am.
So having said that, I think that we are really close to the end of this first meeting of the Executive Committee of the Prince George's Forward Task Force. I do want to thank everyone for tuning in. And I want to thank again the co-chairs of the work groups and all of the support teams that are behind assuring that we move forward in a way that is beneficial to Prince George's County. Again, our families, our neighbors, and our friends. So that what you will know is that we will televise and make public these meetings as is required by the Open Meetings Act. And I would encourage you that if you have any questions, comments, or expert advice, that you email us at pathforward, one word, PATHFORWARD at co.pg.md.us. And I'll turn it to you, Dave Velasquez, for any last comments.
No, I'll just echo what you said. Thanks to everyone who's been involved in this effort, whether you work with the county and helping us and helping the task force, or whether you work on the task force either as a member or just providing advice, or have taken the time to help provide advice. And again, encourage anyone who has ideas, like Dr. Duke said, or comments, please email them to us. This is a collective effort. We need everybody's input, and look forward to getting input from everyone, and look forward to developing these recommendations, both in the shorter term and longer term, to not only help Prince George's County recover from the impacts of the pandemic, which you heard a number of different statistics about today, but then also taking us to a new place and using this to help elevate Prince George's County to a whole new place. So again, thanks to everyone. And that's all I have, Dr. Dukes.
All right. Take care. Enjoy the rest of your day. And